Good evening and welcome to Look North. Our top story tonight. The family of a victim of the infected blood scandal say they want answers and justice when a public inquiry publishes its final report on Monday.
I'm hoping that this final report will give us all the answers we need and the justice.
We'll be speaking to a campaigner fighting for victims' families. Also tonight, the parents of a baby girl born without eyes thank the public for their support. They're on the way to the playoff finals. We catch up with Leeds United's fans after last night's big win. A rare copy of the film Kes is found in a loft in Barnsley and will be screened for the first time in decades.
And a lot of fine and dry weather this weekend with some warm spells of sunshine. I'll be back at the end of the programme with all the details on that and a little look at how long it's likely to last.
Hello and thank you for joining us this Friday evening. The family of a man who was infected with HIV and hepatitis C by blood products used to treat haemophilia have said they lost everything when he died. 54-year-old Ted Burkett from Bradford died in 1992 shortly after suffering a brain bleed. An estimated 30,000 people were infected by contaminated blood products or transfusions in the 1970s and 80s. A public inquiry has estimated that around 2,900 people are thought to have died as a result of the scandal. On Monday, that inquiry into what has been described as one of the worst treatment disasters in the history of the NHS will publish its final report. In a minute, we'll speak to the chair of the Haemophilia Society, but first, our health correspondent, Jamie Coulson, has been speaking to 3 of Ted Burkett's children.
He was a strong man. He was small, but he was mighty. That's how I looked at my dad, small and mighty. So when I lost him, I lost everything. Everything.
We were close, stag nights, booze ups, dart doos. It don't matter if you get on with somebody, you're always gonna miss someone to die, so. Yeah.
He was everything to our family. He was his mum, his dad. He brought us all up on his own. And we kind of lost 2 parents that day, in our eyes.
Right, so this is Dad's treatment records. Cause of death, AIDS.
Ted Burkett was a single father of 5 who died in 1992 shortly after suffering a brain bleed. The 54-year-old's family only found out he had HIV as he lay in hospital. It was an infection caught from contaminated blood products used to treat his haemophilia. Medical records later revealed he had AIDS and hepatitis C when he died.
Nobody gave us any advice where to go next with anything, how to deal with telling us that he had HIV and that he had AIDS. How do you deal with that?
I can't put a picture up in my house of my dad. Because if I see it, it upsets me. So I choose to think about him in my head.
Never met my son. It'd be nice if I could have met him like, my dad. Meet my son.
An estimated 30,000 people were infected in the 1970s and 80s via contaminated blood products or blood transfusions. Many haemophiliacs like Ted were exposed to deadly viruses by a new clotting treatment called Factor VIII, which was made using pooled blood plasma from tens of thousands of donors. At the time, some stocks were imported from the US, where high-risk groups, including drug addicts, were paid to give blood.
The government has recognised that wrongs were done.
A public inquiry that has spanned 6 years will publish its final report on Monday. It's looked in detail at what happened and whether there was a cover-up. The government says justice needs to be done, and it has accepted a moral case for compensation. It's estimated around 2,900 people have died as a result of the scandal.
I'm hoping that this final report will give us all the answers we need and the justice to say, somebody hold their hands up and say what they did was wrong. And I can rest then. and I'm sure my dad can.
Eileen Burkitt ending that report from Jamie Coulson. Well, I'm joined in the studio by Clive Smith, who's the chairman of the Haemophilia Society. That's quite a difficult watch, isn't it? It's been a long time coming. Do you think families like Ted's will finally get the justice they want?
Yes, I mean, watching Eileen's story, I've met Eileen and had the privilege of meeting many people at the inquiry, and on Monday when the inquiry reports, yes, I think many people will get some justice. We expect a further announcement on compensation next week, but of course this is far wider than compensation. The government owe the community a debt that they can never repay, and justice on Monday will be vindication for many families like Eileen's and others who have campaigned for years for the truth, and it will see the triumph of truth over power on Monday, because this is something that successive governments have denied and delayed and refused to take responsibility for. So on Monday, yes, I hope that is the beginning of some justice for many people.
And there have been so many details to work through over the years. One of the things that have been looked at is whether the authorities were too slow to act at the time. This is something that you've highlighted, isn't it?
It is, yes, and many others too. So in the 1970s, we, as a country, were warned by the World Health Organization about the dangers of importing blood. We were warned about the dangers of pooled plasma, which you've just heard about in that story. And when Lord Owen was Health Secretary in the late 1970s, as a country, we committed to being self-sufficient in the production of blood products. That never happened. The government were too slow to do that, and as a result they had to import many blood products, although others were in fact as a result of British product. But it meant that product was imported from places like America, where the blood donation system is very different, where people are paid, and it therefore attracts people who need the money, and sadly they were infected, and those donations were then pooled, and it led to many thousands of people being affected as a result of that. So yes, the government were too slow to react then, but they were also too slow to react to what then unfolded. We know that 1,250 people were infected with HIV, and around 3/4 of those people are now dead. And the help and assistance that was required then, this was a humanitarian disaster which required a humanitarian response, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, well, we'll have more on Monday when the report is published. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, Clive. Now, Leeds Teaching Hospital Trust has told staff its finances are in serious trouble. In an internal email which the BBC has been shown, senior managers say the Trust's financial situation is critical and immediate action is required. The government say record amounts of money are being invested into the NHS, but as David Rhodes explains, all our hospital trusts are planning to cut their budgets in the year ahead.
Leeds Teaching Hospitals is our region's biggest NHS trust. It spends £1.7 billion a year on providing healthcare, but it now needs to save £110 million in the next 12 months. We've seen an internal staff email in which a hospital manager warned starkly the trust's finances are in a critical situation and immediate action is required. If this continues unchecked, we will be in serious trouble, and the consequences will include losing control of our decision making. Across the NHS though, there are tough financial choices to be made. More of us than ever before are walking through our hospital doors, but budgets are set to be cut. In Leeds, they're considering making changes to services and reducing the numbers of temporary staff they use.
And these are people who are often brought in to cover a shortfall of staffing. So to remove them would be very dangerous, because it would mean that the minimum staffing levels we're seeing now are further reduced, and this will impact upon nurses' ability to provide safe and effective care. It could result in harm to patients.
As well as staffing costs, the Trust has seen its electricity and heating costs nearly treble in the space of a year.
Some drugs will be incredibly expensive, particularly as they new drugs that come on. But the main driver of cost in the NHS is staff cost, which is why one of the core responses that we'll find when the NHS is under financial pressure is unfortunately it will look to find ways where it can hold down or even reduce in cash terms its staff budget.
The Leeds Trust says it's increased the number of permanent staff it employs, and that it is working on reducing budget in an efficient and sustainable way while still keeping high-quality patient care at the centre of all that we do. Thanks to the hard work and ideas of staff, we've identified a number of ways in which we can do this to help bridge the financial gap. But Leeds is not alone. every hospital in the region faces a tough financial year ahead. This is the total amount of money that all 11 hospital trusts in our region plan to save in the next 12 months. Every single hospital is drawing up plans to cut its budget. Bradford Teaching Hospital said it faced unpalatable options in its efforts to save up to £39 million, whilst the Calderdale and Huddersfield Trust say as part of their saving plan, they're considering a reduction in staff headcount. The government says record amounts of money are going into the NHS. In 2019, £12 billion was spent on the NHS in our region. Spending went up during the pandemic, but has now fallen to £16.5 billion. However, that is still 37% higher in 2023 compared to 2019. Whoever is Prime Minister at the end of this year, they're going to be asked to provide a lot more money for the NHS.
Some more news from around the region now, and another person's been arrested over the death of a man in a park in Sheffield. 24-year-old Sakad Ali was found with stab wounds in Ponderosa Park on the 9th of March. A 46-year-old man was arrested yesterday on suspicion of assisting an offender. 3 people, including 2 teenage boys, have already been charged with murder. The Bank of England says it'll employ at least 500 people in Leeds by 2027. Its main office is in London, but it employs about 70 staff in Leeds at the moment. The bank says it's aiming to improve trust and understanding of its work across the UK and tap into wider talent pools. Now, conservationists are trying to buy a cherished area of moorland which sits above Topperden. It's after the 114-acre Bridestones Moor was put up for sale by its owner. The group has launched an appeal to set up Calderdale's first community-owned nature reserve. Now, a major milestone has been reached today in a nearly 50-year battle to reopen one of Britain's oldest canals. Once the restoration of Chesterfield Canal is eventually complete, it's hoped the waterway will be connected to the wider canal network. Phil Bodmer went to take a look.
A shiny spade in the ground in Staveley and a first sod cut in the latest phase of restoring the 250-year-old Chesterfield Canal. The waterway runs between the River Trent at West Stockwith through Retford and Worksop to Kiverton Park. There's another 5-mile section to Staveley, but there's still a 9-mile gap to reopen. Among the challenges, what to do about Norwood Tunnel. It's 1.5 miles long and it partially collapsed in 1907.
This particular phase, we're building a bridge, and by building this bridge, it will allow us to get clay into the canal that we need to restore. We have to maintain the footpath, and so the bridge comes first, and that should be finished by September, and then we'll be starting the canal restoration, which will take about 18 months.
The canal famously carried stone used to rebuild the Houses of Parliament in the 1840s, after it was destroyed by fire in 1834.
Eventually, boats will be able to travel from the Trent to Chesterfield, which is a boost to our tourist economy, but also people will benefit from having this wonderful asset to walk and cycle on at leisure, and also possibly to get them to work.
Before work on redigging the canal can take place, a new bridge needs to be constructed to carry the Transpennine Trail over the navigation.
The bridge is being delivered in late September. It'll go up in late September, so in early October people will be able to go across it. All the paths are being done now, permanent and temporary, so when the bridge goes in there's a small amount of work to do to tie everything in.
The journey to restore this historic waterway began almost half a century ago. Today is another important milestone on that towpath. The volunteers hope that will eventually lead to more water under the new bridge. Phil Bodmer, BBC Look North, Staveley.
What a beautiful part of the world it is. Now we're on to sport, and Sally is here with all the very latest and some very excited fans last night, Sally.
There certainly were. You'll be seeing a lot of them in a moment. Yeah, it was a big night, wasn't it, for Leeds United. They have made it to the Championship playoff final at Wembley. The Whites beat Norwich 4-0 last night in what was arguably their best performance all season. They are now just one more win from returning to the Premier League after one season away. Paul Ogden was at Ellen Road to soak up the atmosphere.
It was that kind of night at Ellen Road last night, just when Leeds United needed to deliver a ticket to Wembley for their raucous, unfailingly loyal fans.
Come on! Straight now, going into the final, what we wanted, off the back of that, we're going back up, aren't we, kid?
Yeah.
Leeds United, here we go.
Best team ever.
Best ever.
Can you imagine this team in the Premier League?
No. No.
Why'd you say that?
Because I don't think they're good enough. I think they need to spend a fortune to what a stopping Premier
night I've ever had here. Scarves were going, fans were chanting, it were brilliant, honestly.
We don't belong down here, we need to go up, that's it, full stop.
I think they'll do it at Wembley. I do, honestly. And I'll predict the score, 3-1.
I think they're ready for Wembley and possibly a tilt at the Premier League. The question is whether Wembley and the Premier League are ready for them. Paul Ogden, BBC Look North at Ellen Road.
I think Oggy was lucky to come out of that alive. Now, speaking of Wembley, in Rugby League, it's Challenge Cup semi-finals weekend and 3 of our teams are 1 game away from their Wembley final in June. Huddersfield Giants will face Warrington on Sunday. The Giants have lost their last 3 games in Super League, but head coach Ian Watson is convinced they can put in a performance of the calibre that saw them knock out Catalan Dragons in the quarter-finals, with the goal of Wembley a huge incentive.
To get to Wembley and get into a Challenge Cup final is absolutely massive. You look at the prestige and the history in and around the competition, and I know I was brought up watching it with my family. I know it was the one that was coach trips from every amateur club, all wanting to go to Wembley and watch the final. It was always kind of packed out, so I was kind of brought up on that. I know how big an occasion it can actually be, so to be a part of it's really, really special.
And in the women's semi-final on Saturday, York Valkyrie will play reigning Challenge Cup holders St Helens. York had a comfortable 74-0 win over Featherstone to make it through to the semi-finals. But this week, several members of the team have been battling a sickness bug. So head coach Lindsay Anfield is hopeful they will recover in time.
Yeah, a bit of norovirus. Yeah, I think in future we need to have stricter protocols around players coming to training who think they're not well. But yeah, it is what it is, and we suffered a loss off the back of it. So it's a lesson for me and it's a lesson for the girls as well.
Meanwhile, on Sunday, Leeds Rhinos women have their semi-final against Wigan. The Rhinos made it to the Challenge Cup final last year, but were beaten by St Helens, so they have unfinished business at Wembley.
Last year to get to Wembley but fall short. Yeah, probably one of the hardest days in my coaching career, because I felt like, kind of so close yet so far. But and a lot of emotion went into it, with it being the first. You wanted to really make your fans and the players and everyone involved wanted to make someone proud and themselves proud, and we did well to get there, and we know we did some nice stuff, but it weren't quite enough.
All the Wembley dreams at the moment, Amanda.
Isn't it just everything to play for? Thank you very much, Sally. Now, you may remember in March we met Margot Duffy Moss, the remarkable 18-month-old from York who was born with a rare eye condition. It means she has no eyes or optic nerves. Well, since being on the news, the family have received huge public support and goodwill, including a visit this week from a renowned Braille artist who has heard their story. Carla Fowler went along to catch up with Margot's journey.
Exploring a world without sight. 18-month-old Margot Duffy Moss from York was born with no eyes and no optic nerves, a rare condition called bilateral anathamia. Regular habilitation sessions help her to learn, but the smile says it all for Margot. It's just fun. Whilst she's thriving, there are ongoing surgeries to prepare her eyes for prosthetic implants when she's 3. But a recent outpouring of public support has helped.
It's been absolutely amazing and so heartwarming to have so many messages of support from people who have seen Margot on the news and have heard about her story.
Margot's just had another surgery, and her parents especially asked to express their debt to the medical team who look after her.
There's a huge team in the hospitals and the NHS, and they've done nothing but give the best kind of care to Margot. We can't thank them enough, and I'm sure she'll thank them when she's able to.
One person who heard her story on BBC News was Clark Reynolds, an artist from Plymouth who's come to deliver a special gift.
Something just hit me in my heart, and it was like, I want to do something for that young girl, especially when I heard about 100 operations, 1 year old. And being an artist, the only thing I could do for her was to create her name in Braille, because that's what I do, I'm a Braille artist, and I have a duty of care to inspire the next generation of visually impaired children to be creatives, to be artists, and just to be seen.
Oh, Margot, can you say thank you?
She may not be sighted, but Margot does have the world at her fingertips. Carla Fowler, BBC Look North, York.
Isn't she gorgeous? Those lovely chubby little arms. Now, it's one of Yorkshire's best loved films, Kes, and now a long-lost original copy of the film has been found in a loft in Barnsley. It's one of only 2 known film reels and is in remarkably good condition. Now it's set to be played to a cinema audience for the first time in more than 50 years. Ollie Constable has been to see it.
Pressing play for the first time in decades. This is a copy of the legendary Ken Loach film Kes.
Come on then!
It's synonymous with Barnsley, a story about a local lad, Billy Casper, perceived as a no-hoper who finds a purpose in falconry. Written by Barry Hines and shot right here in the town.
Well done, Casper, the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life.
There's a lot of pride for the 1969 classic. It was thought only one original print of the film still existed, kept at the British Film Institute. That was until an incredible discovery of these tins, found in someone's attic.
To find something that's over 50 years old, and the print itself hasn't run for probably most of that time, to be fair, it's fantastic. And the fact that it's a Barnsley-based film, it's Kes. Everyone in Barnsley loves Kes, everyone knows Kes.
The 35mm film is thought to have been played to audiences during its initial cinema run in 1970. It's likely the cinema it was at closed down, and it was never handed back to the distributor. Put into storage and untouched for years, until now.
As a print, it's just in amazing condition for its age. It really is. I've got Billy there, that's really good.
The reels have been loaned to Barnsley's Parkway Cinema so they can be played again to the public after every frame is meticulously checked. The film star Di Bradley, who played Billy Casper, is still asked about working on Kes.
Kes has that wonderful quality of being so real, and that's why people resonate towards it. And it's quite funny as well in places.
Why is it important that this film still exists?
I think it's still wonderful that we still have 1 or 2 copies of this wonderful piece of magic. That's the only way I can describe it. And the fact that people still want to see it and still stop me in the streets pretty much every day to say how much they love the film and my portrayal of Billy. It's really quite warming.
A showing of the film is planned for next month. An original copy back on the big screen.
And that, boys, is how to take a penalty.
Ollie Constable, BBC Look North, Barnsley.
Right, come on.
Fabulous. And you know what? I don't think I've ever seen that film. Have you watched that film?
Many, many years ago.
Yeah, I can't remember one.
You should like it. You like all things vintage.
Absolutely, I'm there for it. Watch this space. Now we're onto the weather, and you have good news this weekend.
I do have good news. We do have a few days of settled weather, but I think both mornings will start off like this. So yeah, we're going to have some sea fog affecting us, grey misty mornings right across the board to start the day, both Saturday and Sunday. So this was the scene at Whitby at around lunchtime. It really struggled to lift through the course of today here, and the next picture shows it did brighten up for some of us. Some of us got some warm spells of sunshine, and we did reach 19 degrees. Keep your pictures coming in to the Weather Watchers page. We're on social media as well, Keeley.Donovan on Instagram. There you go. And on X as well, Keely Donovan. So we'll start both Saturday and Sunday morning on a grey note, but that should lift and we should get some warm spells of sunshine. It may just be that right along the coast we see that sea fog lingering both on Saturday and particularly on Sunday. But generally the weather looks settled, mainly dry due to this ridge of high pressure, and it looks like it could be settled for Monday and Tuesday as well before rain approaches on Wednesday. So you can just about make out on the satellite picture this strip of cloud which we started the day with. That was yesterday's front. It's now moved to the north of us. We have had a couple of showers break out across parts of South Yorkshire, so perhaps some showers in the short term. The main feature overnight is this sea fog, low cloud, mist and fog spreading inland overnight, becoming quite extensive, but a mild night. Temperatures down to around 11 or 12 degrees. Let's have a quick look at those high water times. 1:37 in Scarborough and 2 o'clock in Bridlington. So we'll get off to a grey start to the day. There might just be a few showers around through the first few hours of the morning, but that cloud will lift and break and we should have some good spells of sunshine. We might just see that coastal cloud returning right along the coast, but there's a stronger signal for that for Sunday. Later in the afternoon tomorrow, parts of South Yorkshire, the Peak District could get the odd heavy thundery shower, but for most places, for most of the day, it does look dry and warm. Temperatures 20 or 21 degrees, always that little bit fresher along the coast. Tomorrow evening then we'll see that sea fog redeveloping again and spreading back inland overnight. So a fine evening, but then overnight low cloud, mist and fog. It could well linger along the coast at times on Sunday. Otherwise another dry and fine day with some spells of sunshine, Amanda.
Keely, thank you very much, and thank you for the picture of Whitby. Always lovely to see the coast. That's it from us. Do have a lovely weekend, whatever you have planned. We'll be back with your late news and weather just after 10 o'clock. Hope you can join us then. Goodbye.